Welcome to the University of Eastern Finland's Innovation Pathways podcast, where science meets real-world impact. In this series, we will explore how ideas born in our labs will evolve into innovations, collaborations, and even growth companies. Today, in our very first episode, we will ask the big question: can you really be a top scientist and an innovator at the same time? To answer that, we are joined by two UEF researchers approaching innovation from different perspectives. We have Professor Tarja Malm from Leinonen Institute of Medical Medicine, whose innovation thinking developed over time with a long academic career, and researcher and Research Council of Finland fellow and group leader Henri Leinonen from the School of Pharmacy, who brings an entrepreneurial mindset into academia from early on, shaped by his background in pharmacy. I am Minna Hendolin, Director of Impact at UEF, founder of biotech company myself as well, and I would say an innovation veteran who has been cooking this soup of innovation for decades in various roles. But let's dive into the subject. Innovation can look very different depending on where do you stand in your academic career. So Tarja, how did you realize that your research has some commercial or societal potential?
I think I kind of grew into it. So I don't have any formal educational background on commercialization. I did my PhD and postdoc work in Jari Koistinen-House Research Group, and he has extensive experience in bringing innovation into impact and has established multiple companies, for example. So I gained extensive hands-on experience in collaborating with companies and working towards commercialization of our research findings. And Jari kind of brought this culture to the group, which is, I think, not necessarily evident in all academic groups. So for me, this kind of became a continuous side quest, running in parallel with my PhD and postdoc studies, and it provided a valuable insight into the interface between the academic research and the industry.
Okay, great. So that was already kind of very early exposure to their thinking of that it's really imprinted in everyday work. Hey, what about Henri? So what triggered your first steps in the path of innovation?
So as you in the introduction you briefly mentioned, so my background is in pharmacy that really planted the seed very early on me. So in Finland, many pharmacists, which is provisory in Finland, many of us become entrepreneurs, many go to pharma industry. So thinking commercially is quite natural to me. But the real spark came really during my postdoctoral research period in USA and especially in California between 2018 and 2021. Suddenly I was surrounded by people who moved rather fluently between the research industry, startups, and so on. So I felt like innovation there wasn't something that, it was not framed as something separate or risky. It was just a part how they was thinking about science, I felt. And that experience made me realize that you don't need to wait until later in your career to start thinking about impact. You can stay fully committed to academic research and still be curious about where the work could eventually matter outside of academia.
Wow, so you really went to this hotspot of their innovation to California and got exposed also very early to that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
But what about, have you found any misconceptions or what has surprised you really about this commercialization in your way?
Yeah, sure. There is some misconceptions. So I think one misconception that I had, and this came really more from studying the technology commercialization itself rather than from personal experience, but it was the idea that commercializations would mean taking major personal financial risks, because this is not true. I was surprised to learn that in most technology commercialization cases, you are not expected to put your own money or your home on the line. It's the investors who take the risks, so angel investors or venture capitalists typically. And as a researchers, what you really invest is time and effort. But this is a lot of time and effort, not small time and effort. But this is typical in academia anyway. So we invest a lot of time to begin with, whether there is this innovation conversation path or no. So as a PI or group leader, you invest so much time in things that may or may not work. So it's not so different, in my opinion at least. I would say another misconception was that commercialization only would start when you have something almost finished. You have a product or something like this. What surprised me was that how much of this is actually about learning. It's about learning the problem space. It's about learning from stakeholders and even from your own assumptions. And especially in academic innovation, it is often a very, very long path that involves learning through countless of mistakes.
Great. So you really need to go beyond your own comfort zone also and learn new things. So that's very good takeaway message as well. But what about Tarja? What kind of ideas you have for this thing?
So perhaps my biggest misconception as when you're excited about your discoveries has been to assume that this exciting and scientifically very promising innovation is closer to commercialization than it actually is. Because academic findings, especially those that are novel enough to be published, likely represent only very early stages of so much more longer translational pathway. So in reality, to be able to successfully commercialize something, it still requires substantial amount of additional data that might not feel academically meaningful or publishable. And this is often difficult to produce just because at this point, the innovation is too immature, for example, to Business Finland funding schemes. And on the other hand, a bit too incremental in novelty for academic funding schemes. So in the context of drug development, for example, this could include extensive toxicology or pharmacology or other validation studies that are essential for demonstrating safety, robustness, and sort of real-world applicability. But one might not necessarily carry out all that for academic publication describing a novel therapeutic target.
Sure. Yeah, that's also something that you really need to go beyond your comfort zone, but also to find this new knowledge and understanding. What does it really mean to be a part of the innovation journey? But also, in addition to invest your time, like Henri said, you have to also invest on your knowledge and your vision. And there should be this great vision that the further funders and investors are ready to take. Hey, this has been very valuable to hear, and I think this really suggests that innovation isn't about timing. It's perfectly, but it is something that is new opportunities that open up, and so it's about the culture in the group. That's super important, and then actually you don't need to choose between science and innovation, but they both enrich each other. Okay, so let's move to the next topic we have planned to discuss today, and it's about from ideas to impact and those many routes from research to innovation. So I would say that there are not only just routes, but it could be also possibilities and new options. These whole things might sound quite complex, and surely many now young researchers especially are thinking that how I can navigate in this jungle of all kind of weird, wicked words like licensing or proof of concept and different kind of fundings. But let's hear what our experts who has taken these steps and might have a view for this. So Tarja, could you share some concrete examples how you have been able to navigate in this jungle, I would say?
So I think I have kind of learned as I have went on. So since establishing my own group, I have been involved in numerous collaboration projects with industry partners. And although these projects were financially supported by the companies, they were structured as academic collaborations, and all the resulting data will be eventually openly published. And in addition to that, we have also carried fee-for-service work for several companies. And while these projects were not always scientifically that exciting, they have provided valuable exposure to industry expectations and the way how research is done in an industry or in a company, including timelines and deliverables and milestones. I have also participated in several Business Finland funded co-innovation projects, and these are these kind of large consortium initiatives that typically involve multiple companies and research organizations. And these create excellent opportunities for multidisciplinary collaboration and industry engagement. I have also led 2 research to business projects, and this way I have gained understanding on how to work effectively with different type of companies and project structures. At this moment, I'm running 2 proof of concept funding projects aiming to develop further innovations. So let's see where these will lead into. And I think the innovation aspects of our activities have actually set up some practical guidelines on how we do research in the lab. For example, we have very specific bookkeeping of all our lab work. We follow detailed SOPs and make sure all contractual issues are established. And also we scrutinize our findings before we publish so that we do not lose IPR.
So in addition that you have got external funding, more funding for your research group, you have also learned a lot when doing this kind of innovative collaborative projects with and research. What about, can you say that you have also done research? Is it kind of high quality research that you've been able to conduct in these projects?
Absolutely. So everything we do is high quality research.
Exactly, yeah. Because that is, I think, something often I hear that, no, it's not research funding, it's something different. But this is, I think, one of the myths that we want to break also, that you can do real top research in
I think
this
it's one more misconception.
Yeah, exactly. Good that you, Henri, added that. All right. Hey, what about Henri? You have your navigation pathway crystal clear already for your innovations.
No, Minna. I think at this stage I'm not committed to a single path too early. So I'm exploring different impact routes and trying to understand what actually makes sense for the type of science we do. Well, that being said, when I think about it strategically, I do see a lot of value in developing invention further internally rather than licensing very early. Because early licensing often captures only a fraction of the potential, whereas developing the work further internally, potentially even towards a spin-off company, this would allow us to mature the science, generate critical data, and significantly reduce the risk before any partnering discussions. And when it comes to collaborations, I would say they are not a goal in itself ever. Collaborations are something I'm open to when there's a clear mutual benefit. For example, some complementary expertise, access to infrastructures that we wouldn't otherwise have, or acceleration towards well-defined milestones much better together than alone. One thing that is very good at this point, though, is the proof of concept projects that Tarja also mentioned. They are very attractive at this point because these proof of concept projects allow us to de-risk the science and generate validation data and often leverage non-dilutive funding. And that kind of foundation is extremely valuable, especially in the academic setting.
Yeah, that's good. Good that you mentioned these proof of concept projects, and also many universities like UEF, we have proof of concept funding. Once a year, you can apply funding for proof of concept project, and then also Finnish Academy of Science or the Finnish Research Council also have proof of concept funding. And I would say that also Business Finland's research to business funding is kind of proof of concept funding. So there are different phases that you can apply the kind of validation funding for your projects. What about small things matters but what kind of milestones you have had, smaller or bigger ones, Henri, if you think about?
Yeah, so I'll just add one more.
Okay, do it.
One more proof of concept. So ERCO Foundation and some private foundations also might have.
Yes, there are different funding opportunities.
Yeah, so there is quite a bit of this proof of concept. But to the milestone, so one small but important milestone for me was when I was pitching our ideas directly to industry for the first time during my postdoc in California, and getting feedback from people deeply involved in drug development and big pharma was extremely valuable. Another and more recent meaningful moment was in 2024 here locally at the Tarja ski lift pitch event in Kuopio, where I was pitching our Business Finland Research to Business project. And there in this ski lift pitch event, we met a mix of angel investors and few venture capitalists. And even though nothing was signed or decided in the event, this was extremely valuable experience in terms of understanding how early stage biotech stories land outside of academia. And for me, these kind of moments have been very important milestones, not only because they lead to immediate outcomes necessarily, but because they accelerate my learning.
That's extremely important insight and to early expose your own idea to others, like whether it's investors or funders or collaborators is utmost important. And we also at the UF services, university services, we organize different kind of events where young researchers or further distinguished researchers can really do the pitching and rehearsal and get these ideas and innovations visible and for further larger audience. And it's very important to participate in those. All right, but hey, but how do you know when to move forward? When do you think that your research is fundamental and when it really shifts towards kind of innovations or more commercial application side? So what do you think, Henri? Is it this a kind of not one or none other option?
I think it's quite a complex question, but from my perspective, I don't see this as a binary choice. I recognize that fundamental research really needs protection. But on the other hand, certain things can be selectively moved toward applications once they are mature enough. The key really is being intentional, so protecting the curiosity-driven science while at the same time carefully stress testing specific elements for impact also outside of academia.
Yeah, exactly. One needs to very intentionally keep an eye and also mind open for the discoveries, because in science it is actually super easy to lose the opportunity to protect the IPR if you really don't pay attention.
Yeah, that's true. That's very important. And also to remember that if you anytime realize that there might be something, contact your supervisor, contact the innovation services and file the innovation disclosure and check the background that you don't actually lose this uniqueness of your idea too early. But things might not always go well, and things happens and failures, but how to overcome those, or because life is like that. It not always goes like you have planned. Henri, what do you think? Have you ever failed in your path?
I think I have failed way many times than succeeded when we talk about academic and research projects. This is completely natural. And failure is a friend. You just have to learn from it. That's the point. Like if you don't learn, then it's a little dumb. But that's the key. And for me, failure in this innovation context particularly, it's often better described as a redirection. Especially in academic innovation, many ideas don't fail necessarily because they are wrong, but because of the timing and the context and the application isn't quite right yet. And coming from academia, we are already trained to live with uncertainty and negative results. And what innovation adds is kind of another layer. you might realize that the science is solid, but the use case needs to change. Or that the problem you are solving isn't the most urgent one right now, but might be in a decade or so. One important difference compared to business world and academia is that even when the innovation path doesn't move forward, the work still needs to back into science. So this is good for academia. You generate data, you refine hypotheses, and often end up with better questions. So very little of that effort is truly lost. It just changes direction.
Yeah, I think that's very good kind of description that it's not the failure, it's more like a redirection and you step by step improve the things and learn during your journey. Tarja, what about you?
Yeah, I completely agree with Henri said. And I have also found that even these, in the case of failure of these side quests that we do, they are not really true failures. More often, they kind of lead into maybe even unexpected discoveries or new collaboration or even fresh funding opportunities. So engaging with non-academic environment really broadens the landscape of possibilities, even if the initial commercialization goal does not come true.
Sure. But so how do you know when things are ready? What happens?
Yeah, excellent question. I think I might be a little bit too junior to answer that, and I would just ask some industry people first. But perhaps if I need to say something, it's like I feel like when the scientific uncertainty is past. So, for example, in my case, we have drug mechanism and we have preclinical data and so on, and And now the practical uncertainty becomes more interesting and timely. So, for example, like a clinical translation, when the next unknowns are not about mechanism and so on, but they are about feasibility, they are about validation, and when they are context rather than basic mechanisms, so like practical things. So that would be maybe the moment when you have kind of the science done, so this not completely done, but if you catch this.
Yeah.
And I would say that there's not only one outcome often from this kind of innovation process or project. So often you can get several different outcomes could be followed then to the next level and next kind of impact. What about Tarja?
Yeah, in my experience, it is often the experts, like company representatives or the investors, who can really tell whether something is ready for the next step, or they can tell you what is needed in order for your innovation to be, investor ready. And this is why we bring them into our projects early on, because it really helps us to understand what the industry is actually looking for and whether our innovation is something they'd be interested in, at least from the start.
Yeah, and then we come back to the same thing that we already mentioned before, that you have to expose, you have to discuss with the people outside the academia, funders, investors, potential customers even, to improve and get the feedback of the feasibility of your idea. Great. But if you might feel sometimes alone with your ideas, so universities offer all kinds of services. So what are your experiences, Henri and Tarja, about the services or help you have got?
Well, I see that the UEF innovation support makes it very easy to explore ideas without pressure to commercialize. It helps you to think clearly about options and timing while still be protecting the core science that you're doing. Specifically, I think it's less about a single service, this innovation services, and it's more about ecosystem. It's about access to people, access to networks, and conversations when you really need them.
Great. What about Tarja?
Yeah, I completely agree with Henri. We work closely with the UEF Innovation Services, in particular with Matti Höytö, who has really supported us on a wide range of topics. And when we start planning a new project proposal, for example, we try to involve him early on. Usually in the beginning of, the planning with an informal discussion about the idea. And these conversations have been extremely helpful in refining the concept and strengthening the overall proposal. And also now I have noticed that the UF has made some very important strategic decisions to support the preparation of not only scientific funding preparations, but also Business Finland funding preparations. And this is an actual very important practical support tool for the research groups.
Great to hear. Great to hear. And that's true, Tarja, that we have trying to put a lot of effort on boosting innovations and corporate collaboration and external funding, this special funding tools, but also opening up the proof of concept funding for social sciences and humanities ideas, which are something that there are a lot of potential. But hey, that's great. And it just reminds me an old African saying that you need the whole village to raise a child. So I think it goes very well with this innovation that you need the whole ecosystem to raise the successful innovations. And so I think the takeaway message also for especially the younger scientists is that if you have an idea in your mind, you think might be some unique potential for innovation. So contact your supervisor, contact the innovation services and get things forward. You will find the answer. But okay, but we still have one set left. All right, so we are already approaching the end of the podcast, but still a couple of really practical things that how to make it work. Because many researchers, they are worrying about that there's no time and how can I combine the science and innovation? There are a lot of pressure coming from different angles. And so, Henri, how do you avoid spreading yourself too thin?
Yeah, that's excellent questions. And honestly, I'm still figuring that out. I've learned that I can't do everything at once. So I try to be rather selective about when I engage with different topics, including innovation. And at this moment, I'm really keen on to learn from more experienced perspective. So Tarja, perhaps you have some good practical ideas.
Well, I kind of tend to get involved in many different initiatives and sometimes maybe too many. But on the other hand, they have all been incredibly rewarding. And of course, I cannot do everything myself. And I've learned that the real key is to have a strong team. And I have been extremely fortunate to build a highly versatile group with capacity and motivation to drive things forward, including also people who are actually genuinely enthusiastic about creating real-world impact from university innovations. And in fact, this enthusiasm creates further enthusiasm, so it kind of spreads. And this is what I'd like to achieve.
Yep, this team comes, I think, and often when even the investors are looking at the idea, and these are the capabilities that really need to improve if you want to get things forward. But if you have a lot of things, how do you choose which ideas to push forward then?
Yeah, you left the most difficult questions at the end. So we kind of touched upon this earlier, I guess, when we talk about like asking from investors. So I think this would be a good thing if you know some investors, you can ask. But in innovative academic research, you don't know upfront which ideas really hold up. If you know already that it's going to work, it's not innovative science. It's not like it just has a big risk of failure. So to deal with that, I rely a lot on brief testing of ideas and being willing to pivot really fast. We don't know always in advance, or never we know in advance, which ideas will work. So learning quickly and redirecting is often the most realistic strategy, I would say.
Yeah, this is true. You really have to investigate each idea separately. And also some ideas are just simply something that needs to be published quickly. And you just have to consider them separately.
I think that might be also something you, Henri, learned in California. So if you fail quickly and fast and get out.
California is good, well known of that.
All right. But hey, for the end of this podcast, let's go back to the initial question that can you really be a top scientist and innovator at the same time? Do they distract each other? Henri?
Yeah, well, I think a common myth for academics comes from imagination that innovation is something that automatically adds a second layer, second workload on the top of research and teaching and so on. And when that happens, of course, it can be very distracting. But from my perspective, when innovation is integrated thoughtfully, it actually sharpens the scientific thinking. And being forced to articulate why something matters, who it could help, or even what assumption it relies on often exposes new gaps, and those gaps become new important research questions. And I've seen that this way of thinking can also open doors to new funding opportunities without lowering the scientific standards. So rather than distracting from excellence, innovation can actually reinforce it, and as long as it's approached quite selectively and at the right time.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think science is innovative and it is also innovation. So these two do not exclude each other. And we all do research because we want to have an impact. And this is important.
Yes, that's greatly said. So innovation is not a separate track. It is an extension of science, curiosity, and it's a part of the societal responsibility. So thank you, Tarja and Henri, for opening this new podcast series with such honest, insightful perspectives. Your journey shows that innovation doesn't replace science, it grows from it. In our next episode, we will actually explore concrete routes from idea to commercialization, real-life examples, how to build successful collaboration beyond the academic world, and meet teams who had really worked the path. So be tuned. And if you are a researcher wondering where to go and beginning, this might be the day of your innovation journey might start just now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.